Okay, I think she's going to go live in a second here. Okay, we are kicked off. Good sir, we're even 2 minutes early, which is astounding. So
for us, especially.
Yeah, exactly. So I think first things first, let us introduce ourselves. Do you want to start and let folks know who the heck you are, Kev?
Hey, I'm Kevin Wagar. For those of you who don't know me, I run the website Wandering Wagars, and with my friend Chris here, I also run a website called Ultimate Ontario. We're also two of the co-founders of the Blogger Collective and the Toronto Bloggers Collective, and we're looking forward to answering some of the questions that you guys have made on SEO and content building.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll follow that up and say I am indeed who I say I am. I'm Chris Mitchell, and yeah, I run Ultimate Ontario with Kev, and also the Blogger Collective and the Toronto Blogger Collective with Kev. I also run travelingmitch.com, and yeah, just we're excited to be here. Really, floored with the engagement that we saw on the thread with all those questions. I think there's a lot of really valuable questions that we can, genuinely dive into some things that people will find useful, or at least that is the idea. So for people who are watching live, great. We kind of saw this as mostly we're going to put it up in the group, but we'll save all this afterwards so that folks can watch it on our membership platform and just do that on their own time. So there's no, we have more than enough questions to get through the hour. So that's the plan there. And if we have extra time at the end, we'll open it up to questions. But I think the best thing is to just get rolling on those questions, and we'll go through them in order. And basically, we'll kind of go back and forth on them and just tackle all of those for everybody. So obviously we hope that folks find this nice and useful. So the first question comes from Lindsay, and she's saying that she feels like she's doing all the right things on Google, but when she goes back to check on her article, like it would be ranking for kind of 15 to 20 keywords, but then she's seeing that, she says, is there something I'm missing in the keywording department? I mean, I typically incorporate as many of the suggestions Key Search gives me, but should I also be doing something else? So thoughts on that, Kev?
Well, from what I'm hearing in this question is that Lindsay is doing something that we recommend, which is researching a whole whackload of keywords and trying to get as many relevant keywords into an article as possible. This is a great strategy for getting information out there, but it does require a little bit of depth. And this is becoming a little bit more challenging as Google's systems continue to improve year over year. So back in 2015, Google started using this artificial intelligence process called RankBrain. And they started using that to try to sort out some of the more obscure keywords and less common keywords that were being input by people in a way to try to take them and make them fit into searches that were already more relevant. So for example, if you were thinking of, to use like a travel type of thing, if you were to use like how to, or the best things to see in Toronto, for example, whereas some other people might just type in the word Toronto or Toronto to do or something like that. And so there's different ways for people to input the same kind of query into Google in order to get, they're hoping to get the same results, but they're inputting different things. So this RankBrain tool is essentially designed to, I'm sorry if that went on, I'm sitting beside the printer.
No worries.
So what that RankBrain tool is designed to take these obscure queries and kind of fit them into a box that Google sees fit. So as the years have gone by, this tool has improved significantly. And it's gone from being involved in about 15% of their searches to, I think, somewhere around 50% now. And more and more, this tool is being used to convert searches from specific keywords to intent. And the idea is that Google is trying harder and harder and harder to understand what the intent is behind each of the searches, which means that when we're putting in the keywords that we want to have associated with our articles, it's becoming less important to simply drop the keywords into a sentence and more important to build a paragraph or a piece of content within our larger piece of content that directly addresses that query specifically. So in a nutshell, what that means is that Google isn't just looking at the keyword itself, but how that keyword is being used. Mm-hmm. So this means that those long tail keywords and those secondary and tertiary keywords that you might be kind of throwing into an article in order to hopefully rank for them are getting swallowed up by the larger keyword algorithms. And so what is likely happening is that some of those tertiary keywords, other articles might be addressing the context behind that query a little bit more deeply than yours. And this is where long tail content comes in, where you can really get as in-depth as you can on each of the queries and each of the pieces of information. One of the good ways to address that would be to go to Google and kind of type those keywords that you're not ranking for into Google and have a look at the little area where they have the other queries that are similar. They're like little drop-down tabs, and you click on it, and then a little snippet from one of the websites that's answering that, or that Google has chosen to answer that question, is showing. And if you can find that in one of those little snippets there, then that gives you an idea of where Google is looking currently for that answer. So if you can come up with a better way to answer that question, then that might be worthy of a new section or a new paragraph within your article itself.
Yeah, I think, I was just going to tack onto that and just say that something that we try to think about with Ultimate Ontario is to always make sure that in our introduction, we have at least one snippet worthy paragraph. And that means that it's not, of course we want that title to be, what to do here or whatever, but we also want to have that paragraph that talks about basically a summary of what we're going to be talking about. Like, we are excited to talk about all the things to do in London, Ontario, which is a city that's known for great breweries, enthusiasm for sports, and so on and so forth. But you want to make sure that you're giving that quote unquote a snippet worthy paragraph. And the only other thing that I would add on to that really is just that I'm a big Reddit fan, and they always have like a TLDR, too long don't read, right? And it's the TLDR is that keywords alone aren't enough anymore. It's the keyword approach. And so you need to make sure that not only are you using the keywords, but you're using the keywords in particular paragraphs, which are answering you, like basically checking off user intent. So that's kind of the approach. So Lindsay, I hope that was helpful for your first question there. Kev and I are going to continue to build out SEO related materials on the membership platform. So we should reiterate, this is not going to be like, I hope you like SEO because this is the only mastermind week we're ever going to do. We're going to do what our membership wants. And so if this is demand, Kev and I sadly are available to talk about SEO anytime, any place. So Greg has our next question here. And he basically just says, I've never actually learned how to read or use key search other than kind of a quick 2-minute overview. And he goes on to add that he understands it, but he's never really been trained on it per se. The words, the phrases, PA, DA, M-rank, all of that kind of stuff. So I will just tackle that really quickly for Greg here. Firstly, should just mention that our intro to SEO course is a good place to start for all this. A lot of stuff we're talking about more in depth here, but that's a nice place to start. We cover a lot of stuff there. I am going to share my screen really quickly here just to pull up key search. And Kev, you can let me know if it's successful or fails spectacularly. And
yeah, I see it.
Okay, excellent. So just because I know that Greg is dealing with French content and particularly cities and that kind of stuff, I just thought this would be a good one to pull up. And I think he mentions it later for the query. So for key search here, I've just put in what to do in Lyon. The first thing to note just up here is that's the exact phrase I'm typing in there. I want to type in the exact phrase that I'm going to be using. Of course, you have the opportunity with key search to change up your location. So this is useful for, let's say that, I don't know, Kev and I are looking at Ultimate Ontario and we're noticing that we have 98% Canadian audience, which isn't true. It's about, I think, like 80% or something like that. But we really want to tap into an American audience. If we're looking for a query around, let's say, Niagara Falls, and we want to make sure that we're reaching Americans with that query, it might be worth it to do a quick check and just see, are people in the US searching for what to do in Niagara Falls? Now, that example is explicit because we know that they are, because there's two sides to Niagara Falls. That's a complicated keyword mess because of that in some way, because there's US and Canadian. But that's just an example to show that you can go here and you can search really anywhere. And that can be helpful. Of course, the way I have it set right here is to search for related keywords, which just means on the right side here, I'm searching for other keywords which might be helpful and related to what to do in Lyon. And I can use database, Google Suggest, Bing, YouTube, whatever. I'm just going to go back quickly to what to do in Lyon. So first thing that can be helpful is just look at search trends. Right now, the search trends when it's related to travel literally pretty much just correlates to the spike in COVID and when people are able to travel. Because if you look at this chart here, March and April, no. May, June, July, maybe there's some hope. August, September, October, November, not so much. December, actually, I mean, maybe that's not exactly true, but what I'm really trying to underline here is that your search trends are going to be correlated to what's going on in the world. If the world is traveling like crazy and you're searching for travel, then you're going to have higher search trends and you'll be able to spot that. And it just always shows you the last 12 months. I always like to just keep it on SERP analysis here, just to get a picture of who I'm competing against. So this, for people who don't know, is literally just the front page of Google. These are the top results for that query. And there's a few things that are worth noting. For one here, I mean, it kind of already tells you your score is 39, so your competition is easy to moderate. 39 to me is still a score that's got to be respected. When I'm looking at scores that are really like easy to get, I'm looking at like 18, 19, 20, fine with 21, 22, kind of whatever. Part of the way that I think about the score is to compare it to my own DA. So if my domain authority, which you can check and we'll add to SEO review tools, has a good, easy way to check your DA. But I always think about it as when I'm running a new site, I kind of try and make sure that if my DA is around 20, then I kind of feel like I can probably attack those words that are 20. I'm good to go. That being said, that's not true necessarily at all. If you do the right things, if your DA is 10 and you build out an extensive funnel on a topic, then you're going to do just fine. This is just kind of I think of it as just kind of like it just helps me to place things. Here you have page authority. DA is kind of what you're focusing on. Domain authority. We can see here that 6 of the top 7 results are pretty heavy to be able to attack. And then the bottom 3 here, 55, 56, 45, those are pretty high domain authorities. You'll notice here that title, description, URL. It's not the exact of what to do in Lyon. I'm guessing most of these are things to do in Lyon, but I wouldn't take all this green personally to be a real green light. There's probably a lot of variations, very similar variations to that. When I look at a keyword like this, I'm not particularly enthused by what I see. I'm not sure about you, Kev. It's not like something where I would start to salivate. What I would do is to start to look down this list and see where there might be some other opportunities here. And quite frankly, let's see, like Lyon, there just might not be. Other things that you would mention here. I mean, the main thing that I'm looking at personally first is DA, looking at the amount of links that are flying back in. I'm looking at title, description, and URL for sure. Is there anything else that you're looking at here, Kev, in particular that
one thing that you touched on, Chris, that I think is important is having a look like on the right hand side where you can see that title, that description, and the URL in the the bar a little to the left there.
Yeah.
And it goes with the PA, DA, MRank, MDOM, authority, links, title, description, URL. So the title, description, URL kind of gives you a rough idea, a rough glance right up front as to how directly competing that article is to you. However, going back to kind of what we were talking about in Lindsay's first question, Google's really good at figuring out the intent of the user, and they're becoming better and better and better at that all the time.
Hence this one right here,
looking
right, Kev?
at what to do, and like what Chris said about things to do and attractions in and things like that, all of those types of articles are more and more going to be kind of lumped into that same idea of intent. So it's a good idea to go through and make sure that any of those ones that you think you can compete against, or those ones that are really up there in rank, are actually ones that you are competing with, or ones that just haven't been shuffled out of the equation yet.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I was going to say here is, like, this post, for example, has no business being here, but I bet you Bucket List Brie has an entire funnel, or like an entire, this might be her pillar content, so that she might have 10 articles on Lyon that all lead to her things to do in Lyon article. And that's why she's sitting right there. So it's not like it's unattainable to get there. The other thing too is, even after I check this, I always type it into Google, because there'll be some queries that it shows you that this is the front page, but Google's taking up the first 9 results with ads that people are really heavily trying to hit. This often happens for hotels, golf courses, that kind of stuff. So that's good to remember. I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. I hope that's a good overview for you.
Do you want to just touch briefly, Chris, on the keywords, keyword volume, and
oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, that would be kind of critical. So the big thing that I would focus on here, volume is, on a broad scale, just going to tell you how many people are searching for that. So when you see here what to do in Lyon, what to see in Lyon, that's the volume, that's the amount of people that are searching for that term per month, if I'm not mistaken. And, you want to balance going for a keyword or keyword phrase with high volume with, while trying to balance that with finding the lowest score possible. So what to do in Lyon, I look at this list. I'm probably, the first thing I'm going to do is say, okay, well, I see some of these here are really trying to target the keyword of things to do in Lyon. So it would be best I take note of the fact that what to do in Lyon has 1,000 volume and a score of 39. And I'll just quickly check here, things to do in Lyon, and just understand, well, is that a better phrase for me to target? And if I remember correctly, it was something like 2,400 for that volume, and 42. And I would take a peek here and say, this is slightly harder to attain. We see Bucket List Breeze at the bottom down there. But I mean, we can get into cost per click and stuff like that. But I think generally speaking, the main thing that we want people to take note of is the volume and the score, right? Or do you want to mention anything else in regards to that?
No, I think that's got most of it covered there. I mean, in a nutshell, PA is the page authority.
That's right.
DA is the domain authority. The next one that's kind of important to look at is links, which is a rough idea of the number of incoming links to that article. And that's a really important metric to look at. Like if you look at this one by TripAdvisor, it's got 5,000 incoming links. Of course it does, because it's TripAdvisor.
Mhm.
But you know, some of these other ones like this FrenchMoments.eu has close to 450, and that's a solid amount of authority that's being sent its way. In the title, description, and URL, just simply mention whether the search term that you've inputted are being used within those three aspects of the article. So is things to do in Leon being used in the title? Is it being used in the meta description? And is it in the URL?
And we can actually see here that as opposed to what to do in Leon, a lot more people are using things to do in Leon, of course, right? And that's just going to be more common. And so it's worth it for you to think about, okay, so there's a volume of 2,400 for the things to do in Leon. Is it more worth it for me to target what to do in Leon, while understanding that you're probably going to be battling a lot of the same content that's going for both of those long tail keywords ultimately. So all things to remember. So anything else on that before we move on to the next question?
I think that covers it.
Yeah, we can go into more depth on that and build out like a little course on that or something like that at a later date. Okay, am I back? Am I back to the screen? Beautiful. Okay, so the next question is that Sandra says, I've never really done SEO and I want to start actually writing in my blog this year. What do you recommend for a newbie to get started? So the first thing that I wanted to mention before I pass it over to you, I mean, of course, we're going to say check out our Intro to SEO course. Keep mindful of the category on the Blogger, the Blogger Collective membership page. We're going to keep adding content to that as we go along. The real thing that I wanted to highlight before letting you chime in here, Kev, is just that you want to focus on keyword research and getting a tool like Key Search. I think we have an affiliate link, I believe, that we can offer that gets 20 people 20% off. And mentioning that, Sandra, like when you start to incorporate SEO into your writing, it's not about changing what you write, because I know you're eccentric and fantastic and you're writing all of this content that like, you don't want SEO to sap you of your energy. You don't want to change what you're writing. You want to change how you're writing it. And so really the way that I think about it is it's not, I think about it as like before you were writing a book, without chapters almost. And now what you're trying to do is just give those chapter headings. You're just trying to make it, not change what you write, but make it easier for your reader to know what you're writing. And that's kind of the way that I think about it. And also understanding where you sit compared to other people. Do you want to talk a bit more about that? Just kind of an overview of where you would start with SEO?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're dead on there. I mean, start with the introduction to SEO course. It's got a wealth of information there. And, for those who were present during the live chat that Chris and I gave a while back, we've expanded a lot on it with some new information that's come out, and it's more up to date, and we're going to keep it up to date moving forward. So do check it out again if you've already gone through it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll move on here to Cassandra, who had some great questions to add to our thread here. And this is a great opportunity for us to use. She was gracious in giving us some links to kind of play with here. And I think we're kind of excited to just kind of show her what she might be able to do with that. You dug into this a bit, Kev, and I think you're going to share your screen and talk a bit more about this. And obviously, Cassandra, we hope this is helpful for you. We'll try and give you some actionable tips and advice here. And yeah, take it away.
Okay. All right. So let me, I hope you don't mind.
Sorry to interrupt. First, I should just say, she's just mentioning that 2 of her posts are on page 1 and 1 is the snippet, and they just don't seem to be getting as many clicks as they should be. And she just says she's worried that if she updates them, she'll lose her ranking. And she wants to know any tips for getting a higher open rate when you're on page 1. So a few different things there that we're going to talk about. And I think you're going to talk broadly about a few things.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's have a look. And I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing some snippets of your work here, Cassandra, but I think it's worth checking out for everyone and for yourself. So I had a look at your Tofino packing list post. And first of all, it sits on page 1 of Google, and it sits in the top position, and it is the snippet. So those are 3 really, really, really great positions to be in. So when it comes down to click-through rates and traffic and things like that, we have to dive a little bit deeper in order to try to understand why you might not be getting the kind of traffic that you are hoping to get. So the posts are all well written, and Google recognizes that, which is why this information is where it is. So if we look at Tofino packing list in key search, we can see here that it only has a traffic volume of about 20. And that traffic volume is relatively consistent year round, which means that about 20 people a month or so are searching for Tofino packing list. A really, really, really good click-through rate in Google is about 10%. And if you are getting, hitting 10% of a click-through rate of 20, that still comes as less than, one a month. So I think part of the issue that you might be having is simply just a matter of having a low volume keyword. One of the ways that you might be able to expand on that is kind of going back to Lindsay's question, which is addressing multiple keywords in a single post. So if you are able to go through and look at the kind of content that people are searching for when they're searching for Tofino packing lists, and try to answer all of those questions that you possibly could about Tofino and what people need to know before they go there, then you might start getting some click-throughs from some of those other keywords that are out there. One of the other things that we might want to look at is your domain authority. So your domain authority is 8, which means that your website is just really getting established right now. That it's just starting to get in there. And the fact that you're competing, I mean, you can see here that you're competing against domain authorities of 31 and 55 and 58, and you've got them beat on this keyword, which is excellent. That means that Google is looking at you and saying, this person has content that's worth reading about this subject. But you might struggle with higher volume keywords. So this one is a very low volume, level keyword. So it's only got a difficulty rating of 9, which is golden. But what you need to do in order to get that traffic to come through is to start targeting those keywords that have a higher traffic volume. That's, higher traffic volume keywords generate to higher traffic to your website. So what I'd like you to have a look at is, let's see how you can leverage this high ranking on Google as a way to generate a higher domain authority for your website. And one way to do that is to go out and reach out to other people who are creating content on Tofino, higher domain authority sites. Look for the sites that are really, really ranking high, and focus on blogs, but also on businesses and tourism operators and things like that, and reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this, I see that you write about Tofino, or you offer tour packages on Tofino and things like that. It's a place that I am really passionate about. And as you can see here from these screenshots or whatever you decide to share, I rank number 1 for Tofino packing list. I have an excellent post, and you don't always have to be honest about the amount of traffic you get from it. You can emphasize that a little bit, and say, hey, I'd love for you to reference my site and let people know if they're heading to your destination or this destination, that they can get some really great information here. And hopefully that will translate to some link backs for you, which will possibly gain traction for traffic because they're sending their readers to you in order to get some information on the packing list, but it will also register as authority because these people who are in these higher domain sites are linking back to you as an authority and saying this person has some really great information on Tofino. And then that will raise your page authority and it will raise your domain authority and then allow you to compete for those higher volume keywords as well.
Great. So did you have any other pages that you wanted to share?
No, I think that should cover it there. That pretty much shows all the information
That's perfect.
that you need. Yeah.
Great.
I'm gonna stop.
Unshare that beautiful screen of yours. Beautiful. Okay, great. Thanks for that, Kev. I think that's excellent. So the next question is from our pal, Greg. And Greg wants to know, is it always necessary to add a table of contents to boost my ranking? What plugin is best for this? And just love a whole refresher on the whole schema thing and the number of alt tags on images. There was a little bit of a back and forth there. Our buddy Rudder hopped in there for a second. For the schema thing, that's kind of all something we're experimenting with. Something we talked about. We're focused on the whole snippet thing right now and just making sure that we have that a very snippetable paragraph for Google to comb over there. But obviously he's asking some deeper questions there around table of contents and so on and so forth. Do you want to touch on that for?
Yeah, I can dig into this. I use table of contents quite regularly, so I'm fairly well versed on this. And maybe just before I jump into that, I'll tackle the alt tag thing. Yes, you should absolutely have alt tags on all of your images. The value of alt tags is twofold. So alt tags are tags that you put on your images. So within WordPress and most other content creation platforms, there's the ability to kind of add an alt tag or an alternative tag to your image. And what the job of that alt tag is to describe what the image is about to people who are visually impaired. So it is an important thing to have on your website, first of all, for accessibility, and second of all, because Google looks for it. And Google will use that for a very valuable part of its search algorithm, which is Google Images. And Google Images uses alt tags as its reference source within that search tool. I generate a lot of traffic to my website from Google Images. So it is not something to be kind of scoffed. It's something a lot of people search visually, and a lot of people will look for destinations just like they do on Instagram. They'll look up the images of a destination and then choose the websites that they want to check out based on what they find in the photos. So alt tags are very valuable for that. And then, of course, there's the accessibility issue, which is very important. From a third perspective, there's an SEO value as well, because alt tags are a way for you to kind of sneak in your keyword, your major keywords, a couple of extra times. So if you're a little bit creative in the way that you write your alt tags, you can usually get, one or two keywords thrown in on the images as well, which is really valuable. Back to table of contents. No, table of contents are not something that you need to have. They're not necessary at all. There is an SEO value in the fact that it gives you the opportunity to add your keywords in a few extra times, because usually a table of contents is going to be based on your headers, and your major keywords, your primary and your secondary keywords should be within your headers at least a couple of times. So it basically kind of throws an extra instance of those in high up in the article where Google is looking for them, and then there is some SEO value to that. However, only use a table of contents if it is something that is valuable. So I create very long form content. It's not rare for me to have 3,000 to 5,000 words in an article. So I use the table of contents to give users the ability to kind of skip through the stuff that they might not want to read and then get to the meat that they're actually looking for. Some people, for some people, this is looked at as a negative because it can reduce time on page. But I have a typical time on page on my website of like 6 to 7 minutes, which is really high. So I don't worry about that. I haven't found at all that it's worked against me in any way. But that being said, you might not want to use table of contents for things like recipe posts and short listicles where, people can easily breeze through that content, because that's stuff that's, you'll just be skipping over those short facts, and it might just be better for somebody to scroll through in a situation like that. In terms of table of contents tools that are attractive or fanciful, it really kind of depends on what your aesthetic is. I use a tool called Easy Table of Contents, which is a classic WordPress tool. If you look it up, it actually says that it's out of date, but a lot of big bloggers out there use it because it's simple and it's bulletproof, and it hasn't been updated in like 3 years, but it still just works like a dream. If your site is on Gutenberg, then there's table of content blocks that can integrate with your website really nicely, like Publish Press uses a really nice one, and a few others. So if you're on Gutenberg, then if you haven't tried Gutenberg, I recommend you try it. I've switched over in the last year and a half, and I'm finding I really like the way that it works. But it's a very easy way to integrate those table of contents into your content.
And I just want to chime in super quick and just talk about, I have one of my sites one site of like, I don't even know how many sites now is on Squarespace. And Squarespace, for anyone, I know there's some users of Squarespace who are in the membership group, and Squarespace is not, it's just not known for plugins. It's very much like how Android is sort of like open source and Mac is closed source. That's kind of the way I think about those two. Squarespace wants to control everything from the inside. There is a way to create table of contents on Squarespace. You just have to get nifty with code. You have to, nothing's easy if you want to do it customized on Squarespace. It just takes you a little bit longer, but you can create jump links on Squarespace with customized code. If anyone's wondering about that, it is possible. It's just annoying, like some other things generally on Squarespace. But anywho, I think that covers it really nicely. Casey asks us next, hey, Kevin and Christopher, I know you two are SEO superstars. I've used Alexa Moz and SEMrush in the past, so I know. I've seen some success by employing much of what I've learned from Mediavine and Make Traffic Happen and yourselves, but I worry. Make Traffic Happen, by the way, is another community that they deal specifically with SEO. It's run by Gemma and Laura, and they're really good people, and they're very supportive. But anyways, he says, but I worry it's much easier to apply SEO tools to something tangible like travel destinations as opposed to building SEO around something like fatherhood, which is so much more personal. I definitely, know to look towards competition like Fatherly and the Good Men Project for inspiration, but it's hard to see the day where I'll multiply my traffic by, another few times over. So he also links to an article about SERPs, which are search engine results page. It's just what SERPs are just what comes up when you when you enter a query, and talks about snippets and stuff like that. The article is quite interesting, but it mentions some paid tools. Anyways, we'll link to that. For people who don't know, we're going to put this up as a course. The first link in the course here is going to be a text that references anything that we talk about in this mastermind period. So we'll make sure that link's in there for you guys. Anyways, to answer Casey's question, I'll tackle this one a little bit. SEO is always relative. The first thing that I do when I'm trying to kind of broach a topic is, and this comes from my background in education. I was a teacher before this, and I think it's sometimes helpful to just do a brain dump and just do a classic web of anything related to what you're talking about. So what I mean, Casey, is like, you might be finding that there's some aspect of fatherhood that, you know, is particularly hard to rank for, but that doesn't mean another aspect of fatherhood is not, you know, much easier to rank for. You know, what I'm thinking about here, this is just a random example, but let's say you're really trying to get some new people onto your site. I know Casey's content, he's very real, he's very down to earth. And, you know, some of that content, which can be akin to personal diatribes and stuff like that, I know from personal experience, it's just harder to rank for that stuff. But you might want to search for, like, just literally take an afternoon and go ballistic, create your web of related content to what you're looking for, and then search for high volume keywords and be a little bit experimental. So for example, you might be talking about something to do with like masculinity or race or you know, how you relate to that as a father. But you might find there's some ridiculous article about how to coach a sports team that has 3,000 search volume. And you might write the most biggest badass article about coaching a sports team or being a, you know, a father who coaches or whatever. And that might lead you down a path that it's bringing you in a bunch of people to your site and leading them to your other content that's, you know, maybe not as SEO friendly. And then, you know, what you do is once, and I'm not saying that that's going to be the answer, of course, but find that web, find those random outliers that are huge traffic sources, and then basically create it so that you're linking to other content in those high traffic posts that are leading people towards the rest of your site and the content that you really want them to see. And, you know, something that we do on Ultimate Ontario, you know, to make sure that we kind of make sure we're holding on to people who are coming onto our site, we have a newsletter. We have a pop-up that just says, you know, we want to make sure, do you want to see the best of Ontario? Sign up for our newsletter. And then it doesn't matter how people entered our site, we get them into our funnel. And this is not like a funnel like, like this is literally, we have an 85-day intro sequence built out now that's just getting people familiar with our content, hits them up regularly, and then we're getting them all the content we want them to see. So the trick isn't always about writing that piece of content that you think represents your brand the best. Sometimes you want to write that piece of content that's low-hanging fruit that gets people into your domain so that you can show them the content that best represents you. And that's kind of the way that I think about it. The other thing that I would just mention is that I think it's a real mistake to only write content that is just SEO friendly. There are some instances where writing something personal is going to pay huge dividends. I can speak to, for example, with the Toronto Bloggers Collective, we did the press trip there where we went to the Hive, which was that center that's like a bed and breakfast. And they do all kinds of spiritual stuff there. It's a fantastic place. And that's in Ontario. That post that we wrote about that, or that I wrote about that, was never going to be a big traffic beacon. However, it meant a lot to the people who run the Hive, and it meant a lot to the tourism boards that we worked with. And so in that instance, that post is not about SEO, it's about goodwill, and it's about showcasing a story that we care about. So there's kind of both of those angles. On the one hand, get people into your content, but don't be scared to write that content, especially someone like Casey, who's freaking prolific. I mean, the guy writes like 100,000 billion words a week. And so, you know, I wouldn't be scared to write those articles, but, you know, there's just a few points there that I would bring up, really, that I wouldn't shy away from content that's not going to be an SEO legend, but I would also make sure you know what the SEO legends are. Make sure you know what those posts are that are getting people traffic, because there's a lot of father related sites that are killing it. How are they killing it? Go figure out what keywords they're killing it for.
Yeah, I think you nailed a lot of the points here. I mean, SEO is about answering questions. It's not necessarily about, you know, sharing opinions and you know, speaking passionately. I mean, you can do that, but really SEO is about answering questions. Like when you go to Google, you're entering in a query, a question, you're trying to get something answered and find a piece of information. I wouldn't go on to Google and say, hey, what's Casey's opinion on being a dad? But I would say, you know, what is being a Black dad in Toronto really like? And that is powerful question that a lot of people probably want answered. And so if you look at your content and look at SEO as a way to funnel people into the rest of that content, you've got a solid case for a win, because SEO is fantastic. It's a great traffic driver. But a lot of SEO written content isn't necessarily the kind of stuff that garners an audience. It's not the kind of stuff where people go in and then they get an emotional connection to the person who's writing it. So you have to have other stuff that's going to do that for you. That's what all your internal linking is going to be about. So what you want to do is use these SEO drivers, use key search to find places where you can write about content that you can either answer people's questions about content related to what you are already an expert on, or use it to make money through things like affiliates and things like that. So, and then within those articles, you're driving content out to the other content that has that, emotional punch that I know that you're good at, like that you're an expert on. So do both. And then you've got the perfect marriage for content.
Yeah, I think that's great. Of course, Casey, continue to ask any questions. We'll be happy to help you out with that. We hope that's helpful for you. I think the sky's the limit for what you can do, my friend. So Cassie has another question for us, and this is, I think, one that's pretty straightforward, and she just says, do you only write for keywords you can currently rank for, or do you ever write for keywords that you can try and rank for in the long term? She mentions that her DA is low, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's rising steadily, and so she feels like if she continues on this SEO path, some of her posts are going to end up on page 2 and maybe even page 1. Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions. The answer is unequivocally yes, 100%. That's what's going to happen. The more that you're ranking for other terms, the more that Google starts to see you as a reliable source, the more that your old posts are going to rise up the ranks, your new posts are going to have a better chance of ranking, and something can certainly start on page 1 or page 2 and rise up to page 1. If I'm not incorrect, the last time I really dove into this, just the initial sort of like coming to life of a post, it could take 6 months for a post to really come to fruition under Google. Like, think about how much content Google is looking over, right? And so Google is looking for all of those signals. So for example, with your Tofino packing post, you write the Tofino packing post with a lower DA, but Google is seeing and understanding that people are going to your article, and they know you're answering the question because they're understanding things like, oh, wow, they're spending longer on your post than on other posts. People are finding what they're looking for in your article. And that's kind of what Kev mentioned before. SEO is simply how well are you answering questions? And so Google is assessing, okay, you're answering this question pretty well. So what's literally happening is if you're on page 2, Cassie, and then really Google is just as you move up, it's just saying your post is answering the question better than other people's posts. And that can happen in any case. The other thing too, of course, is naturally one huge factor in domain authority is the age of your site. And so every day that you continue to be a blogger, sure, competition can be more intense because more people are understanding some of the basic premises and tenets of blogging. But at the same time too, your natural advantage is the fact that your site is aging and that you're getting more content on your site. And so as your DA rises, as your site ages, as you get more content, as you continue to update and revive old articles, all of that kind of stuff, and you're posting with some frequency, although post frequency, someone like Brian Dean will tell you, like, he posted 36 posts and ended up with 1 million hits. So post frequency is not exactly the main thing, but it doesn't hurt, especially when you're starting off. But my first answer to that question is, yeah, absolutely. Rankings always change. Conversely, your ranking can go down. That's why you always want to be tracking where your posts are ranking. And that's where you want to make sure that you're updating and reviving old content.
I think that's a solid answer. I mean, when it comes to content, there's a first for everything, and then you build authority around a specific topic.
That's right.
So if we take your Tofino article, for example, if you've got a piece of content that you're ranking for really well, and then you build, you know, a network or a web of content around Tofino and the surrounding area, then that authority from your packing list post is going to start spreading out to those other articles that are about Tofino. And the more you write about a specific topic, the more that entire package of content is going to begin rising to the top. Google loves depth of content. They want a website that is more than just a one-trick pony. So if you have just a single article on a piece of content or on a topic, then it might do well. But if all you have is one article on every piece of content, then Google's just going to think, okay, well, there's no depth to this. We want to send our readers, our searchers, to people who are going to be able to answer all their questions. So having those internal links between different articles that all relate to each other on a specific topic is absolutely invaluable. It's one of the best ways to raise your authority on a specific topic.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And Cassie, if you want to know what that looks like in practice, so, the idea, at least the first idea that comes to me, is get the keywords around what to do in Tofino, all of that kind of stuff. Create a big, then basically create all the content that answers all those questions: what to do in Tofino, where to eat in Tofino, where to stay in Tofino, all of that kind of stuff. And then eventually you have a big pillar content, which is what to do in Tofino, and it links out to, you'll have an H2 in there that says what to pack for Tofino, and that leads to your packing list, right? And so then, and you're interlinking between all of that, and then Google can't help but, you're kind of creating a monster there. The thing that we want to make sure we're doing is that we are padding related content. And that's why niche sites do really well, because for travelingmitch.com, I might write about all kinds of different destinations, but I want to make sure I'm not writing one article about Ireland, I'm writing 3 or 4, and I'm not writing one article about Czech Republic, I'm writing 3 or 4, and then kind of continuing to pad that. But it's much easier for us with Ultimate Ontario, because you could make the argument that everything's kind of related in a sense. We're able to do a lot of interlinking with Ultimate Ontario, because there's just, it's much harder for me to link to an article about Ireland from an article about Czech Republic than it is for me to, mention other cities you might want to consider in a new city guide on Ultimate Ontario. So that's just kind of, I think that's probably self-explanatory, but just in practice, I wanted to mention that. So Cassandra asks, what if you collaborate with a brand where both short and long tail keywords are extremely hard to rank for? She mentions that she's been working her butt off for a dude ranch, but she's stuck on page 2 or 3 where she's up against TripAdvisor and an endless list of dude ranches and tour companies. She's gotten creative with getting posts out there and have a great relationship with the ranch, but she wants to be able to get more exposure for them. So you have a good idea with this, and I'll pass it over to you in a second here. But I wanted to just quickly mention that it's really hard to compete against businesses. There's no real shortcut or way around that. Google is set up to prioritize businesses. That's the way it is now. That's how Google makes money. The last time I checked, 42% of the first page was basically sold to Google. The results there, and the average first appearance of an organic post on something you're searching for there, like hotels, etc., was the 9th query. So what you're up against, Cassie, is not going for the first against TripAdvisor and stuff. You're really battling with all the other people who aren't paying for the 9th spot, and that's just really difficult. That's not, those numbers are not always tried and true, but that is what you're up against, generally speaking. Google used to have a first page that was different colors. All of the ads were purple or yellow or whatever, and you just scrolled right down to organic content that from other, from websites and stuff like that. Now it's almost really hard to spot. You can barely even see the ad there, and so that makes it a little bit difficult. That being said, you can still do other things to get yourself on there. The one example that I had thought of was, you might be trying to get some eyes on your hair salon, for example. That would be a little bit hard. You're going to be up against, if you're trying to represent a Chicago hair salon, you're going to be up against all the Chicago hair salons in Chicago, in the city, who are also paying or who are paying for advertising. But you might want to write about hair dye or something like that. You can look and use a tool like key search to narrow your search down to the US, or even smaller, and figure out how many people are searching for hair dye. Find all the extra curricular topics around that. I've seen people get crazy creative. I've seen dentist office who are writing huge amounts of content on everything related to toothaches and like anything you can imagine to do with teeth and dentistry, and they're getting people in the door that way. So in this case, you might write about everything, every single thing related to dude ranches, and that could even be a post of like how to look like a cowboy, whatever. These posts can all do well for you and lead people to, but of course you want to make sure those keywords are getting more eyes, but some of those keywords should be, framed around how to get customers in the door too. So you want to make sure that some of those queries are like how to look like a cowboy is not a bad keyword, because all those people want to be on a dude ranch, ultimately. So Kev, I know you want to talk a little bit about this as far as angling.
Yeah, I mean, kind of echoing what you said. I mean, when it comes to specific specific brands or businesses, like a specific hotel or a specific dude ranch or a specific property or something like that, competing for those keywords is next to impossible, because in the value of competing for those keywords is almost negligible. And the reason for that is if I'm searching for the Hilton Toronto, I'm not looking for somebody's opinion on what the Hilton Toronto is. I'm searching it because there's a reason that I'm looking for the Hilton Toronto. I mean, I either want to know where it is, or I want to know what the prices are, or I want to book a room there. It's not really a matter of opinion. Chances are, if I'm putting in a keyword that's that short or that direct, I already am sold on it, and I'm just looking for the link that's going to bring me there. So you might want to approach it from an angle of, what is this dude ranch like as a couple, or on a honeymoon, or with kids, or something like that, so that you are then targeting the queries of people who are interested in a product but want to know if it's specifically for them, whether it fits into their needs, their specific piece of interest. The other thing I think that's important to remember is, a lot of the times when people are sponsoring content for things like this, they're not necessarily doing it to get on page one. They're not necessarily approaching you for your SEO value. They're more interested in getting things like exposure. They want to be associated with your brand. They want to be associated with your imagery or your audience. So if you've got a large audience, it could be the social media value that's more important to them. So getting your content out in front of your audience to show them that it was something that you loved and you enjoyed, and you come back with all this great, video or photos or stories about your experience there, and then they're hoping to latch on to that emotion that you pull from it, and drive your audience to query their location and hopefully book a stay for themselves. So don't necessarily approach every brand as an SEO gem, because they're not. Usually, if I work with a brand directly, I might be able to build up content around it, but it's usually not something where I'm going to be competing against them themselves for that kind of keyword. It's more about getting that content out there, showing my audience what a great stay or what a great experience it was. And then usually, I mean, for me, doing things like selling photography and stuff like that on it, which is valuable for me and it's valuable for the brand and the destination and things like that. So it's not always about the SEO value. Sometimes it's just about reaching out and targeting your audience directly.
Yeah. And sometimes adding that qualifier can really, like, I know Bree and I will work together sometimes with a brand or whatever, and they want that qualifier, like what to do as a couple or what to do as a, in the same way that sometimes for you, it's really valuable to have the family aspect because they're trying to get other families on board. And so this part of that is just reflecting what they want to see. I think the social media advice is really a good one. I know, for example, I was working with, particular tourism board, and Bree and I did a TikTok that we didn't think much of, and it got 450,000 views. And you better believe that moment that we put together, me holding up a plate of pancakes or whatever, that ended up being the jewel of the campaign, right? And we didn't think much of it, but try some of that stuff out. Instagram Reels right now is offering crazy engagement compared to what you would get on your normal feed. So play around with that. Bree and I do a ton of repurposing. So we'll create something for TikTok, which we'll put on IG Reels, which we'll put on Twitter, which we'll put on whatever, and you can get a couple thousand impressions that way. And it can take off on TikTok when we get 30, 40,000 impressions. So that's part of the reason. I can talk about this maybe in a course later, but why I always create reports. And the reports are always kind of give an overview of the total impressions that I was able to create. It's not just about the blog post necessarily. So all right, great. We're almost kind of finished up here, maybe kind of 10 more minutes, a couple more questions. And then I know you got to take off, Kev. So Elif asks, what combination of tools do you use for keyword research and then to optimize for SEO on your websites? And she also asks, what do you think is better for SEO, Squarespace or WordPress? I'll just quickly speak to, as somebody who has 5 WordPress sites and 2 Squarespace sites. I think WordPress is better for SEO, largely because if you know what you're doing, you have more customization, and you can use a lot of tools. Like, for example, with WordPress, it's very easy for me to ensure that my images are smushed and not screwing around with my site speed. And with Squarespace, I have to go through a whole process of manually ensuring that every image is teeny tiny, and that has its own problems, but it's okay. You can work with Squarespace. I think there's no real argument that I think WordPress is just better. I can give an example too. Like I had an issue at one point with Squarespace where like Google was taking my dates and putting them into the search results. So it would be like September 8th and then give the title and stuff like that. That kind of stuff just doesn't happen. The benefit with Squarespace, of course, is like it's a little bit more protected. You don't hear of getting hacked as much and that kind of stuff. They have their own hosting and everything like that. But quite frankly, I think of Squarespace as excellent for a portfolio site. There's a reason that I host ChristopherJDMitchell.com on Squarespace. I think it looks really sharp. I've had a lot of people agree with that. But if I'm trying to build a site that has traffic galore, I'm going WordPress. Personally, I think that's just kind of the best way that I can say that is just that I think we can probably both agree that WordPress is the gold standard, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about gold standard, but I mean,
It's
90 some odd
90%.
percent of all major websites are WordPress based, and there's a reason for that, and that's that you can do anything with WordPress that you want. I mean, if you need something done, you can get someone to build it. If you are worried about security, there's 1,000 tools out there that will keep your site secure. If you're worried about image optimization and speed and all that, there's ways to customize it. But with that comes complexity. And
right.
Squarespace is a simpler tool with a very focused audience in mind. So they handle your plugins, they handle your updates and things like that, and you don't need to worry about that. With WordPress, you can get things like WordPress managed hosting from, Canopy Tech, for example, is the one that we used for a lot of our stuff, and you can find their information on a resource page. They are, a local company that handles WordPress hosting, and you can get anything from a basic hosting package all the way up to a managed hosting package where they take care of a lot of the stuff like Squarespace would, so that you can just focus on your content. It really comes down to your comfort level and the amount of time and energy that you want to put into it. So WordPress is a tool that can be used from individuals all the way up to massive corporations. Like Microsoft has a WordPress platform, and a few others. So it's I've worked for billion-dollar companies where I've helped them set up their WordPress platforms for enterprise level businesses, and there's nothing you can't do with it, and you don't have that kind of variety with the Squarespace site. It's great for a one-off and things like that, but not for customization.
Yeah, I would just think about it like, I think the best way to think about it is really that Android and Apple. Everything on the Apple, that's orbiting around Apple has to be approved by Apple, whereas WordPress is more customizable, and you can kind of do a little bit more, kind of think about it as like a car, like a Tesla. Like you have to make sure that whatever you're putting into your car fits the Tesla, and they're going to improve that, sort of approve that. And I think that's just kind of the way to think about it. I don't think there's any like problem with Squarespace personally. It depends on intent. If you're using it as a place to promote your brand, and you just want it's a pretty easy user experience, and you just want that nice, easy, comfortable, the mobile is pretty nice to sweep through as a user. It's nice and easy, like that's great. But if you're trying to get your site over 100,000 or something like that, I would probably go with WordPress personally, just from having played with this kind of stuff. I do think of Squarespace, generally speaking, as a better fit for a store, a portfolio, a small blog, which accompanies, like, you're a beast on social media, you're absolutely killing it, and you just want a really nice looking site to share your thoughts and have a place where people can contact you and all that stuff. Squarespace is excellent. But if you're going a little bit larger, then go WordPress. We should probably just, her question was, what combination of tools do you use for keyword research and optimizing? We talked about key search. Again, I think we have a 20% off coupon there. Any other plugins that we'll put that in the resources, by the way.
We did post on Tuesday a thread, and it listed most of the pieces of software that we use. So I would say just go to that because it links to all of them. It's also in our introduction to SEO course, so you can get them all there. But as a rundown, a lot of the majors would be Google Search Console, Google Analytics, Moz, Key Search.
Any plugins that you want to mention?
Yoast is a great one for getting started. And it does have a lot of valuable tools for moving forward.
There's a whole bunch that are on the tip of my tongue. We'll add some plugins into the text. We have, like, I think on most of, I know on a few of the sites that I run, we have 15, 16 plugins that serve us well in different ways. It depends what you're trying to accomplish. We'll put together a little list, of resources there. I think we're at the over 1 hour mark, brain dead part of this. So just want to make sure that, but all of that will be there for you. Cassie just had one little question there, or not one little question, one big question about steps for tracking keywords and competitors in Google Search Console. So we talked about this a little bit, Kev, and I think we decided that the question's big enough that we're going to create some content specifically to answer that question for her.
Yeah, this is a big boy, and I think we wouldn't be doing it justice by tackling it in this. I think we need to go in and create like a proper walkthrough of Google Search Console, and we'll do that. And it'll probably take us a few weeks to get it up, but expect that it's coming, and it'll be, it should be very clear by the time we're done that.
Yeah, and I hope you can understand that, Cassie. We've answered a bunch of your questions here, and I hope that was really helpful for you. But we, Kevin and I, were prepping for this, and it just became clear that that guy would take a certain amount of time to get through, which is no problem. But we also want to make sure that we don't answer a big question with a small answer, a big question that deserves a big answer. Like, it wouldn't be doing justice to that question and your interest in that question for us to, without us diving into it properly. So the very last question here, and I know we had some people live tuning into this as we were talking about it, which is great to see. And I know some comments there. Aaron just mentioned Canopy Tech is great. Mark's super helpful. So that's wonderful to hear, because that's we love that. So what I was going to say was, Lindsay was just asking about the tool Keywords Everywhere, which is basically something you can add to your Chrome toolbar. And I just have the free version. It's a Chrome extension or a Firefox add-on that just helps you with keyword research. Basically, the way it functions is that you, when you're searching a query on Google, on top of just seeing the actual results, on the right-hand side of your page, you're seeing related results, you're seeing trend charts, you're seeing monthly estimates of traffic, other keywords, and a little bit of analysis of some of the URLs that are ranking for certain things. Honestly, for me, it's a why not. It's, the free version. At the very least, when you're searching for other things that you normally would on a personal level, you are keeping your head in the blogging game. So you might be searching for something else and a random idea comes up. I might be traveling somewhere else in Ontario, or I might be going to travel somewhere. This is a wishful thinking at this point, but I might be going to travel to Europe and I might be searching for something in the city that I'm visiting. And the keywords on the right side give me a great indication of, oh, I could write about that, or that's a nice volume keyword. The paid version has CPC, like cost per click, more data, a 12-month data trend. The one thing I really like about the free Keywords Everywhere extension is that it gives a search trend on the right-hand side. So you can see, like, for example, if you typed in Zoom, you would see that it just went whoop, 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 whoop in 2020. And that gives you an idea of popularity. It's a really nice way to just kind of visually quickly see how popular something is. And it can be really helpful because sometimes you're searching for something and you see that it's just dwindled in popularity over the last 3 years and you're like, next, no one cares about this anymore. Or you might actually just do some deeper dive in there and be like, actually, that's a gold mine because people have forgotten about this and, I can get more eyes on it. But there also is like the Keywords Everywhere. I think the paid version, you can integrate it with your website. There's like a support for your site to give further analytics if you connect Google Analytics and stuff like that. And you can import your keywords to that. But I don't personally use the paid tool. I use the free tool. I would recommend that anybody uses the free tool. Why not? It just gives you a better indication of how things are going. As far as has it been a game changer for me, it's given me ideas which I've had to use other tools to investigate further. What the paid version does, whether it would answer those questions for me, I can't say because I haven't used the paid version. But yeah, why not? That's my feeling. I don't know if you use Keywords Everywhere or not, Kev, but
I've dabbled in a little bit, but it's
fine.
not something I use extensively.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's a why not sort of thing. I think about it as like in the world of SEO, it's a very light beer, and it's better.
A good tool for changing your mindset on a keyword that you might be a little bit stuck on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think about it as like if you. Yeah, that to go with the light beer thing, like if you like beer anyways, it'll be fine for you, but it's probably not going to be satisfy you too much. You probably need something a little stronger if you're trying to really go for it. Anywho, that gets us through all those questions, and I hope that was really helpful for people. I mean, I know that we tried to prep well for this to make sure that those questions were answered for everybody. And this is something that I know you and I like to do. We'll be back next Thursday. We'll post on Monday next week, I believe. You can check our schedule, but which we posted in the group. But Monday we'll open up a thread for people to put their URLs there. And then on the following Thursday, we will make sure that we kind of go through those and give some feedback for people who are looking for it. And if you're watching this much after the fact, then you'll see this, the second video here will be just below this one. And you can check that out right away to get some more SEO help there. And I hope that was helpful for everyone. Do you have anything else you wanted to add, Kev? I guess
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've dived into everything as best as we can. If we haven't answered anything, please drop a question below and we'll try to dive in a little bit deeper. And as Chris mentioned, we're going to be doing these things fairly regularly because we want to keep giving value and answering those questions so that we can all rise the tide and keep getting better at what we do.
100%. I just saw Cassandra mention, thanks. I learned a lot today. I'm still laughing about the how to look like a cowboy post idea. So that's fantastic. Thanks to the people who are live for this. And I think it's fair to say that, we can happily do this again and answer any more questions. We like talking about this stuff. And thanks so much for everyone who tuned in. We will catch you again soon. And a huge thank you from Kevin and I and the rest of the team from the Blogger Collective. We are here to help, all of us take a leap forward. So we hope we accomplish that with you guys today. So we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, everyone.